Hello. Today I want to talk to you about rhetorical gerrymandering. This is something that I've been teaching my students about for a long time to watch out for. What I mean by rhetorical gerrymandering, of course, is when you sort of in a really sneaky way redraw the boundaries of a particular political district in order to ensure that that you win, or that you could sort of concentrate all of the people that are going to vote for the other side, right? It comes from this sort of colonial times when there was a senator who would redistrict, redraw the boundaries so much that the district looked like a salamander, and so they called it gerrymander. But rhetorical gerrymandering is a really, really profoundly dishonest technique. And once you learn how to identify it, which I'm going to give you a bunch of examples of it. Once you learn how to identify rhetorical gerrymandering, you're suddenly going to realize how often sleazy, unethical people use this technique. Politicians use it all the time. Activists do it all the time. Intellectuals who ought to know better use it all the time. You can even see people doing it like in fights in relationships or in families and things like that, right? So rhetorical gerrymandering is where you sort of unilaterally redefine the boundaries of a word's meaning so that you can win an argument, right? So let's say you have like a particular strange pseudoscientific idea that you're trying to popularize, right? You can sort of, rather than, if somebody is critical of that idea, right, you can, rather than sort of engage with their criticism in a direct way, you can say, well, you just hate science, right? You're just anti-science, right? I've seen that done many, many times. When people are criticizing raising perfectly valid concerns against what somebody's saying. Another way you could see, like when George W. Bush said, they hate our freedoms, right? And that's why the 9/11 hijackers did what they did, which is, just really kind of a gross misrepresentation of what they were actually angry about. What they were angry about was insane, but whatever. But they were not angry about freedoms, right? That was not their beef, right? You can also see it, I've seen it recently, and people do this all over the political spectrum. Let's say you want to sort of get the country to go into a war with Iraq or Vietnam or Afghanistan or something like that. You can sort of wrap yourself in the flag, right, and say that, well, if you disagree with this particular policy proposal that I have, it's because you hate our country, right? And you kind of redefine what that means, right? But it's not just people on the right or conservatives that play this game of rhetorical gerrymandering. You can see the same thing happening on the left often, where you'll take a word that pretty much everybody agrees that that word refers to something bad. So let's say violence or hate speech or racism or sexism or misogyny. There's many, many examples of this. So you start off with a word that first of all, that people have a sort of a common understanding of what that word means, what things it refers to. People see that thing as being negative, bad, maybe even evil. And then what you do is you sneak in a very kind of atypical definition of that word in there, and then you call these things and say, well, if you disagree with what I'm saying, then you're basically condoning hate speech. And you say, whoa, what just happened? You're kind of like shaking your head, right? Well, you're gonna see, I hope, after this video and thinking about it, how to combat this kind of game. So let's say, for instance, let's take violence, right? Most people would agree that violence is something that is done physically, right? That it's something that is like a violent act. It's like you're getting hit or pushed, or there's something, right? Violence is something, most kids would have an idea of what violence is, right? But increasingly, there has been this attempt to sort of rhetorical gerrymandering, where they've been trying to slip in all sorts of other things. So now silence is violence, and now words are violence, and the way I see it is, as I've often said, that words are. I don't think definitions of words are fixed. I mean, obviously, language is as Nietzsche put it, a mobile army of metaphors. Language is constantly evolving. The meanings of words, it's always evolving, and that's fine, and that's as it should be. However, if something means everything, it means nothing, right? And I think words are sort of like plastic bags, you can put a lot of stuff in them, and they can stretch to a certain point. But at a certain point, if you stuff them with too much meaning, they break and they become useless. In the same way that the plastic bags for the grocery store, if you try and shove too much stuff in them, eventually they break and they become useless. Right? Then I think that's what's happening right now to a lot of very useful words like fascism, racism, violence, white supremacy, hate speech. I mean, I could go on. There's so many examples of this, but fake news is another one. So these words are just being stuffed with so many new and strange and atypical, seemingly counterintuitive meanings that they cease to sort of mean anything, right? Now, I'll give you an example that I've often given in class to sort of illustrate this. Imagine if you and I sign a contract, right? And I agree that I'm going to give you a lift, right, in 2021, right? Now, we work together, and we live in the same neighborhood, and you have a car, and I don't have a car, right? And so I say, hey, can you give me a lift, right, in 2021 or something like that, and so we sign a contract. Say, I'll give you $500 if you give me a lift in 2021. But then 2021 comes along, assuming the pandemic is gone by now, and I say, well, actually, what I meant was I want you to build an elevator in my home. I mean, I don't have a multi-floor home, but let's assume that I do. Let's assume that I had like a huge house that has, 5 floors, right? So I said, well, actually, no, I meant lift in the British sense, and I want you to build me an elevator, and I have a contract here that says you promised you were going to build me a lift in 2021 for $500, right? Now, of course, an elevator, I don't know what an elevator costs, but I'm sure that constructing an elevator probably costs, tens of thousands of dollars. I suspect it's very, very expensive to put in an elevator in a building or in a giant house. I'm sure it's like much, much more than $500, right? Now, obviously, no court would actually hold this person to that contract. They would say, well, when he signed that contract and agreed to give you a lift in 2021, he very clearly did not think that you were referring to an elevator, right? He thought you were referring to giving you a ride to work right, in the morning. Right? So you've got to be really careful when people are playing this game, right? Because very often people will try and get you to sign on. They'll say, well, don't you believe that everybody is equal? Yeah, okay. Well, then you believe in this, right? It's not, it's a sneaky little game they're playing. So anyway, be careful of this hustle. Watch out for rhetorical gerrymandering. Make sure that people are using standard or something in the realm of a standard definition when they are sort of talking to you. Because if we don't have a roughly agreed upon definitions of things, then we might as well be talking past each other in different languages. It's already really hard to make sense of the world and to figure out how to do this together. If people are just playing with language the way that kids play with Play-Doh, it just makes it so much more difficult than it has to be.